You raise your arm to wave at someone across the street. And even after your hand stops moving, the back of your arm keeps going, as if it didn't get the message that the motion is over. And in that moment, something subtle happens inside your mind. A small hesitation, a quiet embarrassment, a decision to lower your arm a little faster next time, to avoid drawing attention to something that feels out of your control. And here is the part almost nobody explains clearly. That movement is not just an aesthetic issue. It is not simply a bit of fat. It is not just aging doing what aging does. And if you believe that, you are already starting from the wrong assumption, because what you are actually seeing is a signal, a structural signal from your body telling you that something deeper has started to change. And if you ignore it, it does not stay isolated in your arms. It shows up in other places. Your jawline, your abdomen, the texture of your skin, even the stability of your joints. And most people never connect those dots, because no one ever slows down enough to explain what is really happening underneath the surface. A few months ago, I spoke with a woman named Lisa. She was 52. She walked every morning. She wasn't overweight. She paid attention to what she ate, and yet she told me that no matter what she tried, her arms refused to change. She had bought creams that promised tightening. She had tried light weights because someone told her that was enough. She had even considered procedures, because every time she looked in the mirror, it felt like her body was slipping away from her control. And the hardest part for her wasn't the physical change. It was the belief that she had somehow failed, that she hadn't done enough. And that belief slowly started affecting how she saw herself, how she dressed, how she moved in public. And that is the part people don't talk about, how a small physical change can quietly reshape confidence over time. And when we talked, I told her something that stopped her mid-thought. Your body is not failing you. It is adapting to a pattern it has been exposed to for years. And once you understand that pattern, everything changes. Because now you are no longer fighting something random. You are correcting something specific. I have spent more than a decade working with patients who come in convinced that their problem is purely cosmetic, something that can be fixed from the outside. And over again, I have seen the same pattern. People spend money, time, and emotional energy trying to fix the appearance of something without ever addressing the structure that created it. Because it is easier to sell a visible solution than to explain a biological process, easier to offer a quick promise than to walk someone through how tissue actually changes over time. And the result is a cycle where the symptom persists. Frustration builds, and the real cause continues to develop quietly in the background. And what makes this particularly important is that the body does not isolate problems. When one area begins to lose structural integrity, it often reflects a broader shift happening across multiple tissues. And if you only chase the surface, you miss the opportunity to correct the system. So let's be clear, this is not a fat problem. And that statement alone may challenge what you have been told for years, but it is critical. Because if you approach it as a fat problem, you will apply the wrong solutions. You will chase targeted fat loss, which does not exist in any consistent or reliable form. You will focus on removing something instead of restoring something. And you will miss the actual issue, which is a combination of reduced circulation, fluide accumulation, and breakdown in connective structure. What you are looking at is not excess. It is loss of integrity, loss of coordination between layers that are supposed to move smoothly together. And once that coordination is disrupted, the visual result is sagging, but the underlying cause is mechanical and biological. To understand this properly, you have to look beneath the surface. Your skin is part of a layered system. The outer skin, beneath that subcutaneous fat, and beneath that a thin but critical structure called fascia, which acts like an internal support network that allows layers to glide over each other. When this system is healthy, everything moves freely. The skin feels responsive. The tissue beneath it provides support, and there is a continuous exchange of fluid and nutrients happening at the cellular level. But when circulation becomes chronically reduced, even slightly, over long periods of time, these layers begin to change their behavior. They lose mobility, they begin to stick together, and the body responds by laying down more rigid fibrotic material, which is essentially a form of internal scarring. And this process is not dramatic. It does not happen overnight, but over time it alters the mechanical properties of the tissue in a very real way. Now consider circulation. At the smallest level, you have capillaries, tiny vessels responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients directly to cells. When they function properly, fluid moves in and out of the tissue in balance. But when their activity slows, fluid begins to accumulate in the spaces between cells. This is subtle, often invisible, but it changes the weight and density of the tissue, and over time that added load contributes to the downward pull you see externally. So now you have tissue that is less mobile, less supported, and heavier than it should be. And gravity simply acts on what is already compromised. It does not create the problem. It reveals it. There is another piece most people overlook, and that is movement, specifically the imbalance between flexor and extensor muscles. In daily life, you constantly use muscles that bend your arm, but the triceps, which straightens the arm, is often underused. And when a muscle is not used, its tone decreases, its circulation decreases, and its ability to support the structures above it diminishes. And over time, that creates a situation where the foundation beneath the skin becomes softer and less capable of maintaining tension. And this is why even people who are not overweight can still experience sagging, because the issue is not volume, it is support. At this point, it becomes clear why so many common solutions fail, because they do not address these mechanisms. Applying a cream does not restore circulation. It does not separate adhered tissue layers. It does not reactivate underused muscle, and it does not improve the internal environment required for collagen production. You cannot tighten a structure that you have not repaired. And until you address the underlying biology, you are working against the system rather than with it. The first step in changing that system is manual pinch work. Not a deep grab, but small, controlled, superficial pinches of the outer layer of skin. When you do this correctly, you will feel a sharp, uncomfortable sensation in certain areas, and that sensation is not random. It is feedback. It shows you where the layers have become adhered, where circulation has been limited, and where the tissue has been deprived of movement for a long time. And by repeatedly applying these pinches, you are encouraging separation between the layers, increasing blood flow, and activating fibroblasts, the cells responsible for producing collagen. And this is where the process shifts from mechanical to biological, because now the body begins to rebuild structure from within, not artificially, but through its own natural repair mechanisms. If you stay consistent, you will notice a progression. In the beginning, the discomfort is noticeable, but within a couple of weeks, it begins to decrease. Not because you are ignoring it, but because the tissue is changing. Circulation improves, the layers regain mobility, and the environment becomes more supportive of repair. And over time, many people begin to notice visible improvements in texture, tone, and firmness. Not overnight, but steadily, in a way that reflects real structural change. The second component is reactivating the triceps, and the most effective approach is the narrow grip push-up, performed with elbows close to the body. If starting on the floor is too difficult, begin with a wall. Then progress to elevated surfaces. The key is gradual progression, because as the triceps regain tone, they provide a firmer foundation beneath the skin, improving both support and circulation. And this is not about intensity, it is about consistency and progression over time. Stretching supports this process by improving blood flow and maintaining mobility. And when combined with dynamic movements like controlled arm swings, which introduce a brief but meaningful stretch at the end of motion, you create a combined stimulus that improves both tissue responsiveness and muscle function. And this combination is what allows the system to adapt more efficiently. There is one more factor that cannot be ignored, and that is the systemic environment, specifically vitamin D, which plays a direct role in regulating fibroblast activity and collagen production. When levels are low, the body's ability to maintain connective tissue declines, and this deficiency is extremely common, often without obvious symptoms, and correcting it can improve the body's capacity to restore structural integrity across multiple tissues, not just the arms. As you consider all of this, it is important to recognize the role of time. After 40, collagen production declines, and after 50, that decline becomes more noticeable, which means the earlier you address these patterns, the more responsive your body will be. But even later in life, improvement remains possible, because the underlying biology does not disappear. It simply requires the right conditions to function. So the path forward is not complicated. It involves daily mechanical stimulation through pinch work, consistent activation of the triceps, proper stretching, and attention to systemic factors like vitamin D. And when these elements are applied consistently, the changes you see are not superficial. They reflect a restoration of the processes that keep your tissue firm and functional. And the most important thing to understand is this: your body is not working against you. It is responding to the inputs it receives. It adapts to patterns. And when you change those patterns, you change the outcome. Not instantly, but reliably. And that reliability is what matters, because it means you are no longer dependent on external fixes. You are engaging with the system itself and giving it what it needs to function the way it was designed to. And when you do that, the changes you see are not just in your arms. They reflect a broader shift in how your body maintains itself. And that is where real, lasting improvement comes from.